Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
I think our leader, Trudeau, I don't think I've ever heard him say a true word.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
Oh, yeah.
It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Wiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises.
WTF.
Here.
I know this place is where I am. No other place is better. No matter where I go, I am proud to be Canadian. I am, you know I am. The worst that works out in another country.
The one we call Canadian.
Gentlemen, beam me aboard.
Hey gang, what's up? Just Ehren right here. Like, pretty excited. Like, tonight, we're letting it go. I don't give a shit about advertisements, or we're just trying to have fun tonight. Thank you to everybody that's tuning in. I see Mr. Pickles, Cryptomaria, many of my good friends. Tommy Gunn is in the room. Pretty sure I saw Janet Nunn up here earlier. Yeah. So we're just getting into this stuff.
That the Liberals opposite would love nothing more than
Point of order, Chair. I don't think that that the member opposite should be making any insinuations about what we do and do not care about. We have been just as active participants in these meetings and continue to be. I would like to just have a little bit more collaboration in how we're going to proceed forward, and I don't think that my questions have been unreasonable in any way.
Thank you, Miss Khalid.
Hey gang, what's up? Just Ehren right here, Canadian Looney. This one is incredible. Michael Cooper, MP from Alberta, he slams Iqra Khalid. There's no insinuations in this video. Just Michael Cooper calling out these filthy, woke tactics being used by the Liberals in committee. It is so much fun to watch. He slams her, man. It is hysterical, and, well, it's sad that this stuff is going on, but Michael Cooper is bringing the energy in this one. Check this video out, man. Watch the whole thing. It's a short for my channel, but we'll do a longer video on this one. It's a great piece. Michael Cooper is a man on fire. You can tell he's pissed. Check this out. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
Ms. Khalid, you have the floor. Then I see Mr. Cooper.
Thanks, Chair, and I just wanted to reiterate, because I don't think that my questions were answered, and perhaps if you can take note, I would really appreciate if we can find out how many meetings are there left with the amount of witnesses that are left, and if we add these witnesses as presented in this motion and the amendment, how many meetings does this add to what we currently have, and when are we going to finalize this study?
That before I hear Mr. Cooper. So I was there are 13 witnesses remaining. 2 of them are ministers, which really brings us down to 11. We have any ability to invite. 2 have already been invited and scheduled for after the recess, which leaves us with 9, most of which are former board members, of which I've been bundling in groups of 2 or 3. So I would say what I would call a handful of meetings remain to get through the current witnesses, and then there are 2 from the 4 being proposed today, looking at both the amendment and the sub-amendment. Mr. Cooper.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and let me say that when it comes to the number of meetings that are required, dealing with $400 million that improperly went out the door in terms of non-compliance with the contribution agreements, in terms of multiple conflicts, I say we ought to have as many meetings as it takes to get to the bottom of what happened at SDTC. And I know that the Liberals opposite would love nothing more than
Point of order, Chair. I don't think that that the member opposite should be making any insinuations about what we do and do not care about. We have been just as active participants in these meetings and continue to be. I would like to just have a little bit more collaboration in how we're going to proceed forward, and I don't think that my questions have been unreasonable in any way.
Thank you. Ms. Khalid, your point is taken. Mr. Cooper, you have the floor again.
Mr. Chair, we've seen time and again the Liberals run interference, interject with points of order that are not legitimate points of order, that are points of debate, including when Navdeep Bains, former Liberal Minister Bains, came before this committee. Time and time again, Ms. Khalid and Mr. Drouin intervened, obstructed, tried to block members of the opposition from posing questions about what Mr. Bains, former Liberal Minister Bains, knew and when he knew it, or what he didn't know or chose to ignore, because the Auditor General's report about what happened at SDTC was damning about what happened under former Liberal Minister Bains's watch. And we saw the outrageous display on his part when, with the assistance of Ms. Khalid and Mr. Drouin, when he refused to answer the most basic of questions the first time that he appeared before this committee. Another point of debate from Mr. Drouin.
No, I do. I love the sanctimonious from the opposite colleague. Can we just get back to the business of the committee? That'd be helpful, because that's not
very
advancing
much
anything.
within the business of this committee and the very
really.
motion. Before
Frank Drouin here. Little Frank Drouin. What are we going to say about that guy? Like, he's a creep and a loser. It's only early. We can't get too wound up yet, Patty. Like, we got to take our time. God damn.
We want, and let's just get back to business, and then you can leave your Facebook clip somewhere else.
Right, why don't we let Mr. Cooper finish up, and then I'll, Mr. Cooper, anything else to say, or?
the floor is yours.
The floor is yours. I'm not trying to cut you off. I just
once again being interrupted.
Order.
But we saw, with the assistance of Mr. Drouin and Ms. Khalid, them running interference to protect the minister from answering questions. The first time that he appeared before this committee, he did not answer really any questions that were put to him. So blatant and so consistent was his obstruction throughout that hearing that we had a very long debate in which former Liberal Minister Baines came this close to being found in contempt by this committee. And now, in the end, after the Liberals filibustered for hours and hours and hours, taking us till I think 9 or 9:30 to protect former Liberal Minister Baines, we agreed to allow him an opportunity to come back. He came back. He continued, in many instances, not to answer questions. In other instances, he gave testimony that contradicted what this committee had heard from other witnesses.
Mr. Cooper, I'm just going to interject. I said I would suspend for QP. It's 2 o'clock. So
I'm a pretty big fan of Michael Cooper. Sorry. Michael Cooper is great on here. Like, he slams the hell out of these committees. Doesn't look like a cowboy. He is a cowboy. Like, giddy up. Big time.
end this meeting.
Oh my goodness, like I didn't want that video to end. Michael Cooper, can't wait to see you next time in committee. Like, we cover a lot of committee videos here. My name's Ehren, Canadian Looney. Like, share, subscribe, get notified. We do live shows. We cover the question periods here daily. It's a lot of fun. Come and check out our chat room. It's great. Anyways, Michael Cooper, you just went up a couple ranks on my list of favorite conservatives. That was entertaining as hell. Thank you for watching the video, guys. Ehren, Canadian Looney. Like, subscribe, share, get notified. Come and join one of the live shows. That's it. Thank you for watching the video. Catch you next time. Giddy up, Michael Cooper.
Why don't we treat everyone with respect around here, please? I wouldn't pin it on one side or the other based on what I've heard so far. Did you have something you want to say, Minister?
My reflection was simply that if I'm attacked and treated in the way that I am, I'm going to respond. And absolutely, I am here to answer questions.
Okay.
But I would suggest, Mr. Chair, that perhaps we could start with things germane to this bill,
Chair.
and perhaps in a way that's conducive to finding solutions.
Who controls this committee? Is it you, Chair, or is it the Minister?
Please, Dr. Ellis, the Minister has the floor.
It's ridiculous.
The Minister has the floor.
Ridiculous.
Hey gang, what's up? Just Ehren right here, Canadian Looney. Another committee video. Everything is wild in committee. Dirty business, right? Anyways, let's take a look at this committee video. Always something interesting in committee. Let's take a peek. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
But what it does do is when it says made in Canada and you sell that around the world, that it means something. It means that product's safe. It means it doesn't have feces in it. It means it doesn't have lead in it. It means it doesn't have undisclosed amounts of something that could make you sick in it. So if we can recall a tube of toothpaste, a lipstick, or a lettuce, why in God's name will we not be able to recall a natural health product?
Thank you, Minister. We'll now have rounds of questions from members, starting with the Conservatives for 6 minutes. Dr. Ellis.
Thank you very much, Chair. Minister, you know, we've been down this road before with you, and I guess let's start with some simple questions. You like to use some very emotionally charged language. How many Canadians don't have a family doctor? Just a number. Simple.
Well, according to the most recent report that was just released by CIHI, it depends on province. So you say Ontario is at 88% who do.
Just the number.
The lowest province about 79%. Territories are lower, particularly Nunavut being the lowest.
Minister, I'm going to interrupt you because, again, you and I have gone down this road many times, and you said you've read the report. How many? I'll say it perhaps slowly and clearer for you. How many Canadians
across the country? It's known to be about 82% have.
Excuse me, Minister. Okay. Don't interrupt me. This is not your time for question. You'll have lots of time when you're in opposition to ask questions, if you so desire, or if you're able to keep your seat. That being said, how many Canadians don't have access to primary care in Canada? Just the number.
It's estimated at 6.5 million.
Actually, if you read the CIHI report, it says 5.4 million adults, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So tell me this, is that number going up or going down?
In every province and every territory, with I believe one exception, that the access to doctor is improving. There's been more doctors added, more nurses added. That's in the baseline Kai-High report, so that's actually before our investment
again,
of $200
Minister, I don't
billion.
think that's what I asked you, is the number of Canadians who do not have access to a primary care physician going up or going down?
Access is going up. That in the baseline report, we see every province and every territory access to more doctors, more nurses in almost every jurisdiction. That's a baseline report. That is before the interventions of our signed agreements with every province, every territory, $200 billion being applied.
But we know
and I
very
could talk
clearly,
about all the different ways that we're improving that circumstance, but conservative cuts certainly are going to help.
You know, again, if you don't want to be respectful, why do you even bother coming here?
I'm sorry, I don't find your questions or your demeanor respectful, so I don't know why I should reciprocate something that is not extended.
Point of order, Speaker.
Point of order, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm patiently listening to Mr. Ellis's questioning, and I'm failing to see any relevance to the topic in hand, which is this particular bill dealing with natural health products. So unless he's got a long-winded way of getting to the presentation that we heard and the bill that we are reviewing, like him to focus on the bill that we're talking about. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's valid. I'm not sure that there's a connection between access to family doctors and this private member's bill. This is not an examination of estimates where it's much more wide open. So
Point of order, though?
I do hope and expect that Dr. Ellis will get to the point, and I think it is a valid point of order. Did you have another one, Ms. Goodrich, or is it on this point?
I have a point of order on this point of order. The minister just very clearly said that he doesn't plan on respecting my colleague because he has decided that that is not something he's going to do. I don't think that is befitting of a formal committee meeting.
I think there's I think it's reciprocal, quite frankly, and it's too bad. The witness merits respect, as does the person posing the question, and that's why don't we treat everyone with respect around here, please? I wouldn't pin it on one side or the other based on what I've heard so far. Did you have something you want to say, Minister?
My reflection was simply that if I'm attacked and treated in the way that I am, I'm going to respond. And absolutely, I am here to answer questions.
Okay.
But I would suggest, Mr. Chair, that perhaps we could start with things germane to this bill,
Chair.
and perhaps in a way that's conducive to finding solutions.
Who controls this committee? Is it you, Chair, or is it the minister?
Please, Dr. Ellis, the minister has the floor.
It's ridiculous.
The minister has the floor.
Ridiculous.
I do not. I can tell you that and look, I was in opposition. I've been in the position that they are in, where you ask questions.
Okay.
And I am saying that there's not only is the conversation not relevant, but I don't think that it's at all respectful.
Thank you, Minister. Now, Mr. Doherty has a point of order.
Mr. Chair, it is commonplace within this committee, as well as other committees that I've sat on, that the length of a question is then therefore applied to the length of the answer. Where the frustration comes with this minister is that he tends to go on beyond the length of the time that it took to ask the question. As you know, members are given a specific allotment of time, and it is frustrating when you have ministers appear, not just this minister, but other ministers appear. And I know that this minister is well versed in the art of what we call ragging the puck, and so are other ministers, taking up the time of each member. So when my colleague and others ask a simple question, just a number, that's all that they look to receive. If we wanted the statistics for each province, I would offer through you, Mr. Chair, that would then bode the answer that the minister was going down. I can see that my colleague has done research and has a number of questions that he would
Sometimes I feel like I don't have a partner. Sometimes I feel like my only friend is the city I live in, city of angels. Lonely as I am, together we cry. I drive on the streets 'cause she's my companion. I walk through her hills 'cause she knows who I am. She sees my good deeds and she kisses me windy. But I never worry, now that is a lie. I don't ever wanna feel like I did that day. Take me to the place I love. Take me all the way. I don't ever wanna feel like I did that day. Take me to the place I love.
It's not a great day, but it's a great day for a walk, you know? Anyways, we're going to be walking and talking about this one.
So, to Canadians who are watching, Justin Trudeau and Tom Clark fleeced the taxpayers, and they tried to cover it up. So, Minister, do you think it's appropriate for Justin Trudeau to have awarded his media pal, Tom Clark, with such a flagrant waste of tax dollars, especially during this cost of living crisis that we're facing?
Did you personally, Minister, become involved in the process to cover up for Justin Trudeau's close friend, Tom Clark? Yes or no?
But you spoke in your opening statement about how security is at a pivotal moment in the history of Canada, in the history of the world, and yet there is so much that you don't know. I'm here to tell you today, Canadians expect you to know.
All of us go to Florida. We don't.
Let's go to Florida, baby! Hey gang, what's up? Just Ehren right here, Canadian Looney. We have a treat. We have Melanie Joly, Minister of Affairs, Trudeau's girl, the Florida girl, the Minister of Blow, like Minister of Foreign Affairs, who doesn't do a very good job. She's going to be testifying in front of committee. We've got Michael Barrett's going to take her apart. We've got Larry Brock's going to put questions, can't get straight answers. Of course, we have liberals that are trying to protect her with their woke tactics. Doesn't work in this one. Talking about a $9 million purchase in New York at an inappropriate time, and Melanie cannot really explain it to Canadians. She gives answers, kind of. They're weak. She speaks French too often when she's really like gonna tell a very misleading tale. She'll speak French when she's asked a question in English. Anyways, this girl is just zipping along. Larry Brock and Michael Barrett are gonna tear her apart. Let's take a look. I'll show you. It's right over here. Let's get into the video. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Minister. We'll start with Mr. Barrett for 6 minutes, please.
New documents reported in Politico today reveal that Tom Clark lied during his appearance before this committee. We know that he personally complained that his taxpayer-funded residence wasn't up to his standards because it didn't have a luxury kitchen or the perfect floor plan. And after Tom Clark complained, Justin Trudeau rewarded his friend and media pal with a new luxury condo at 4 times the cost to taxpayers. So to Canadians who are watching, Justin Trudeau and Tom Clark fleeced the taxpayers, and they tried to cover it up. So, Minister, do you think it's appropriate for Justin Trudeau to have awarded his media pal, Tom Clark, with such a flagrant waste of tax dollars, especially during this cost of living crisis that we're facing?
One of the funniest things about Melanie Joly is that she has this tactic where she calls people by their first name to try to like bring some kind of familiarity or friendship or something. Michael, Larry, Michael. Oh, she does it all the time. All the time. To reporters, to other politicians, to the opposition, whoever she needs something from. If she's calling you by her first name, she's backed into a corner, for certain. I've used this tactic. I like it. But I don't like seeing Melanie Joly use it. It's a good move, though.
So, before you interrupt me, because I know, Michael, that's a strategy you use, I really think that there are three things. First, I think that, you know, Canadians are getting good value for money because there will be $7 million in Canadian taxpayers' savings. Second, you know, the process was respected at all times. And thirdly, I profoundly believe that more than ever, as we're going through, the American people are going through an important election today, we need to invest in our presence in the US. So I really hope, Michael, that you agree with me, because I know your riding is next to the US and you have two bridges that permit fantastic workers going through it, truck drivers, exporting and importing millions of dollars
That was sufficient
every
time
day
for you to not answer the
between
question,
Canada
Minister.
and US.
So
I've answered your question.
is it common for your department to spend nearly $10 million on luxury condos without you personally approving?
So first and foremost, to answer your question, this was not a political decision because it was an operational decision. And you had numerous people, officials of mine, that came to see you and said that. So these are the facts, and I really hope that you can...
When did you approve the $9 million
Speaker, this is again
luxury
the strategy
condo
that Michael uses, which is to interrupt
Tom
me.
Clark?
Michael, can you just stop? I'll just finish.
So,
I promise it won't be long. I just want to finish my sentence.
Point of order, Chair.
Yep. Mr. Bear?
Okay. So, in spite of the minister's hostile response to my first question, she was afforded equal time to the amount of time that I posed the question, even though she didn't answer it. I asked a second question, and she was afforded equal amount of time to the length of the question, and she was able to do with that what she wished. Now, if the minister wants to interrupt me, that of course is not in order at this committee. So, Chair, could you please provide clarification to the minister that she will be afforded the same amount of time to respond as the amount of time that I pose the question?
MP Michael Barrett from Ontario is pretty intense, eh? He goes at Joly really hard. Puts the questions right to this woman who doesn't seem to really be able to answer them directly. Always stuttering, stammering, and not giving a real answer to the question being asked. Michael Barrett, though, he's fun to watch.
It has been the practice of this committee that it is the member's time. So if you wish to take 5 minutes for a question and provide 30 seconds for a response, that is your decision, Mr. Barrett, but it is the committee member's time. Go ahead, sir.
To first learn about the $9 million New York City condo on Billionaires Row for Justin Trudeau's media buddy, Tom Clark. What was the date?
So first and foremost, I must say that this was not a political decision, so I learned it through the media. And at the same time, I made sure that all rules was respected, and that's the case in this case.
We didn't get a date from the minister. The story broke on July the 12th, and I have an email from your former chief of staff dated on June 17th that says, thanks for the briefing note of the issue. The decision to sell and purchase a new residence seems like the logical step to take in this instance. Did you meet with your chief of staff between June 17th and July 12th?
So I must say that, of course, the department informed my chief of staff once the decision was taken because, of course, it was not a political decision.
Chief.
So many times per day, Michael. And you know what?
So
it's good news because there's so many things happening.
This is flagrant malpractice.
I'm sorry, I'm speaking.
Yeah, and your time is up. This is flagrant malpractice for you as a minister to just completely ignore.
Kelly, I'm sorry.
I'm going to interrupt.
I understand you're in the same party both, but at the same time.
I'm going to interrupt everyone here. I have the floor. A couple things. It is the tradition in this committee. We use our last names out of kind of a sign of respect, but it is the member's time. I would ask, you'll have, I'm sure, an opportunity to perhaps get some of your points across to other questions, but it is the member's time. We ask that you allow Mr. Barrett to speak and provide answers. You have, we're at 3:44, so you have 2 minutes and 15 seconds, Mr. Barrett.
So, Minister, in the June 17th memo to your Chief of Staff, it says Tom Clark approved the $9 million condo and it was instrumental in the purchase. With hindsight, do you wish that your Chief of Staff had got your personal sign-off on this if you claim that you did not, in fact, know about it?
So, Michael, no. Why? Because you've already answered. You have already asked me the question, and I've already answered. So this was a decision that, according to Treasury Board rules, had to go through the department, and therefore no
These are Treasury Board rules that your government changed. Of course, you raised the limit just in time to, of course, buy this luxury condo for Justin Trudeau's buddy Tom
I'm sorry,
Clark.
but that's false.
Now,
that was done in 2019.
Now, right. Your cabinet made the change, Minister. So you're the one who made the change just in time to be able to make this purchase so that you could say you didn't hear anything and you didn't say anything.
That's
How
false
many
also.
heads of mission have been, quote, instrumental in purchasing luxury condos?
So this is a decision that is always taken by the department. And so I know that you've been doing character assassination against Tom Clark, and that's really sad because when you don't have your facts straight, usually what you do, you resort to personal attacks.
What's really sad, Minister, is that Canadians are struggling just to get by, lined up at food banks in record numbers, and you seem to have checked out on any accountability that you should be exercising in your role as minister. And we see that instead of helping Canadians, you're helping well-connected liberal insiders. So I think I have just about a minute left. And I have to know, because the claim from your officials was that this was going to be a great deal. Canadians were going to save all kinds of money and that they had sold the previous condo. We heard that this was the case. So if you could tell Canadians now, how much was the check that the Receiver General received for the sale of the former residence that justified the purchase of this $9 million condo? How much did you sell the previous residence for?
So we are convinced that we'll make sure that we have $7 million back for Canadian taxpayers because I think it is a good value for money transaction. It is a transaction that is actually well supported.
Is that the check
and
has,
I'm sorry, I'm still speaking.
You haven't received a check.
So, and you've spoken for a long time. It's not a question, it's actually a rant.
I'm afraid we are out of time.
Both Canadians are out of pocket millions.
We've got Larry Brock's going to put questions, can't get straight answers.
We'll go to Mr. Brock, please, for 5.
Minister, notwithstanding your opening comments about the importance of Canada's relationship to the United States, your appearance today is exclusively about the egregious abuse of taxpayer money. Emily Richardson, the Chief of Staff of your Associate Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, the author of the infamous memo, was given information that Tom Clark was instrumental throughout the process and gave the green light for the purchase of the Billionaires Row condo. She testified that she simply inserts information as provided to her. Minister, you acknowledge that she wrote the original memo circulated on June 17th to your former chief that states Clark was instrumental, correct?
Donc, je vais juste répondre à votre question, Larry.
Just to answer your question, Larry. My chief of staff was informed once his decision was made, and that's what was stated here. That's the information I have. These are the facts.
Day after this committee passed a motion ordering all documents from your department related to the purchase of the condo, the same Emily Richardson, who says she simply inputs information provided to her, all of a sudden issued a major correction saying it was a mistake that Clark was instrumental and gave the green light. Minister, do you find that suspicious in any way?
No,
she speaks French too often when she's really going to tell a very misleading tale. She'll speak French when she's asked a question in English.
Non pas, parce que bien entendu.
No, absolutely not. Because as I answered our colleague Rachel Blaney earlier, there's always some information provided to different ambassadors and consuls, but they don't have any decision-making power.
Suspicious, as do the millions of Canadians who are watching this on a live feed. And now it's been confirmed that your staff, the ministry officials who've appeared here, and even Tom Clark himself, the buddy, the good friend of Justin Trudeau himself, was instrumental in starting the process of relocating Tom Clark to Billionaires Row condominium in Manhattan. It was simply unsuitable for him. It was important for him to have the full suite of Gaggenau appliances. It was important for him to have the $5,000 coffee machine. It was important for him to have the golf simulator, and your office provided that to him. Isn't that correct?
Non, c'est faux, Larry.
No, that's not true, Larry. You know what Canadians are looking at today? There are millions of people looking at us. I think that's somewhat exaggerated. I think there are millions of Canadians that have their eyes focused on what's happening in the U.S., the results of today's elections, and what Canadians expect is that we have value for
Demonstrating a failure in that.
Yeah, that is our time. We'll go to Mrs. Kusi and then Mr. Sousa to finish off.
Bonjour, Madame Ministre Melanie. You said in your opening statement today that it was in the media that you learned about the $9 million condo purchase. How is it that you didn't know about this purchase before you yourself admitting to just learning about it from the media?
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm happy to see you. I know that you come from the Diplomatic Network of Canada, being the former consul in Dallas, and I know you trust Foreign Affairs to deal with important assets in which you had the chance to work in Argentina and Dallas. And you know that the rules are always, under my watch at least, respected, and that was the case. And so we followed Treasury Board rules as you did as when you were former consul in Dallas.
Thank you for that response, Minister, but I still find it very shocking, as I think Canadians do, that you were made aware of this purchase through the media. Minister, how did you not know that the Deputy Chief of Protocol in Global Affairs attended a Russian embassy party? How did you not know that?
So that's a fair point, and I was not happy about my team not informing me, and I think I've said what I needed to say about that. Since then, my question to you is, why would the Conservative not support Ukraine in this decisive moment in the world while Ukrainians are fighting for their freedom, but also ours? And I know as a diplomat, you would know what that means.
Well, I appreciate you bringing up Ukraine, because my next question to you, Melanie, was how did you not know that Canada accepted an invitation to send a patrol ship to Cuba while the Russian Navy was present? So I think your point about Ukraine is a very good lead-in to this question. How did you not know that?
So this is a question you should ask to the Defense Department and my dear colleague who's doing a great job, Bill Blair. And he's the minister that will see the doubling and nearly tripling of the defense budget under his watch and under our watch as government, which the Conservative cut the Defense Department's budget 5 years in a row, and that's unfortunate.
My point, Madam Minister Melanie, is that you have just indicated now 3 things that you did not know. You did not know that we had purchased a $9 million condo at a time when Canadians are suffering as a result of your government. You did not know that the Deputy Chief of Protocol for Global Affairs Canada attended a Russian embassy party. And you did not know that Canada accepted an invitation to send a patrol ship to Cuba while the Russian Navy was present, despite your comments about Ukraine. I'm very concerned about you, Minister Melanie, not knowing what is going on. And why are you so uninformed as to what goes on in your own department? Why do you not know?
So these were not the answers I gave you. So of course, Stephanie, you can't, say and use the pre-written questions you had.
Minister
but
said that you do not know.
What I can tell you, what I know, is the investments in the U.S. is fundamental, which you would agree because you used to work as a diplomat in the U.S. as a trade commissioner, which I really thank you for your service to the country, because I think it was
Minister,
important.
but I maintain the position that you did not know those 3 things. How did you find out about the Russian invasion of Ukraine? Did you know that?
I think that not only
How
I
did you
know
find
that,
out
we were
about
ready.
October 7th? How were you made aware of that? Did you know that? It's
Point of
apparent.
order.
And now Melanie needs some backup guys, so you better send in some NDP Liberal MPs.
I think, you know.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Blaney.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm sure the member just doesn't notice, but she is yelling. And again, I just want to bring up concern for the interpreters.
We've had this issue brought up before. If there are worries about the interpreter, they will contact the clerk to address it, so we don't need to do point of orders on those. Go ahead, Ms. Kusi, the time's yours for 1 minute, 10 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fortunately, it is apparent that you do know there is an election in the United States today, as you indicated that in your opening statement. But you spoke in your opening statement about how security is at a pivotal moment in the history of Canada, in the history of the world, and yet there is so much that you don't know. I'm here to tell you today, Canadians expect you to know. And if you hope to one day be the leader of the official opposition, Canadians will expect you to know, Madam Minister Melanie.
A point of order.
Mr. Chair, with my remaining
I
time,
would like to answer.
I'd like to.
Okay, sorry, sorry.
Point of order.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Mr.
point of order,
Kuzmich.
Mr. Chair. On that principle of needing to know, I would encourage the leader of the opposition to get
Okay,
his
that's not a
security
point of
clearance.
order, Mr. Kuzmich.
That's important.
Please, let's stick to real points of order. Go ahead, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. And with my remaining time, Mr. Chair, I would like to move a motion given the evidence that we have received here today. And I have submitted it to the clerk in both official languages. I will now read it into the record. Thank you. Given that newly released access to information documents reveal that 2 months after the appointment of Canada's Consul General to New York, Tom Clark notified Global Affairs that the previous official residence was not suitable and expressed concerns over completing renovations. Given that this information contradicts his previous testimony before this committee on September 12, 2024, when he stated, "I had no role whatsoever in either deciding to sell the former residence or buying the new one," the committee called Tom Clark to testify for 2 hours within 21 days of this motion being adopted. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'll start a speaking order, but
So yeah, Melanie Joly certainly does need help. But when these Liberals come to aid her, they don't really seem to be capable of doing anything that relates to a patriotic Canadian. That's for certain. It's embarrassing to watch these things, guys. Can you believe the state of our country and the direction they're trying to push us? Lord Almighty, wasting our tax money and thinking they're entitled to do so. Investing in us? Why don't you let us keep the money? We'll invest it in ourselves.
I'm going to start from the perspective of what I'm not. I'm not a climate scientist. I'm not an expert on banking. I'm not a macroeconomist. I'm not an academic researcher. I'm a dabbler. I dabble in lots of different things. And I've spent 40 plus years observing how businesses and investors behave. And what I've discovered is psychology and perception have a lot more effect on that behavior than economic models. So as an outsider, I'm going to give you my perspective on what I've seen happen around climate change. And this might not be diplomatic, but might as well cut to the chase. Here's what I've seen over the last 20 years. Climate change is the most publicized, the most warned about, and the most discussed existential crisis that I've ever seen. And you're saying that's merited, that's fine. Second, governments all over the world claim to care about climate change. In fact, every year they gather together in the most recent, the most recent meeting of COP28. Hypocrisy runs rampant in this space. It was said in Dubai. They talk about how they're going to change the world. They set targets that everybody knows will not be met. And I'll guarantee you there'll be a COP29, perhaps in Riyadh, where we will repeat the whole process again. Companies and businesses all claim to be green. They claim to care about the climate. And I'm going to gag the next time I see the words net zero in a company's financial statement, or an airline asking me to pay an extra $40 to see if I want to reduce my carbon footprint. And in this process, they've been aided and abetted by consultants and experts who fed them the buzzwords. And let's face it, ESG is an acronym. It doesn't even merit the notion of an idea or a concept. It's an acronym. Sustainability, just as much of an acronym. And these consultants have told these companies that they can have their cake and eat it too, that they can be green and be more valuable. Investors, same phenomenon. They've pumped in trillions of dollars. Don't tell me enough money hasn't been invested in green spaces. Trillions of dollars. And again, with the promise that they can deliver higher returns while being good. Consumers have been given lots of different ways in which they can show how wonderful they are. They can buy green products. They can invest in green funds. They can misbehave all day and come back home, buy an ESG fund, and say, I'm okay again. But here's, I think, the most sobering reality. After 20 years, trillions of dollars and all of this talk, if you look at how much of our energy comes from fossil fuels, it's barely budged. In fact, you know that our dependence on fossil fuels decreased more between 1975 and 1995 than it has in the last 20 years. And the reason for that was actually the one alternative energy source that most green energy people claim to hate, which is nuclear energy. Over the last 20 years, our dependence on fossil fuels has gone from 85% to 81.5%. We've reduced dependence by 3.5%, and we paid $10 trillion for that amazing fact. I'll let you do the math on that. If you really want to get the fossil fuel dependence down to 50%, you work out how much it'll cost. This notion that you can get good without sacrifice is the heart of why all of this space is in trouble. I'm not in any position to give you advice on what you should do with your banking, your pension funds, but I'll tell you what I think. I think you got to stop with this apocalyptic stuff. Do you really think telling people that the world will end in 35 years is going to make them behave better? That's like telling somebody they have 60 days to live and say, behave healthfully. It's not going to happen. So even if you believe that the world will end if climate change is not met, telling people that is the worst possible strategy psychologically. Second, remove virtue from this discussion. This notion that if you believe that climate change is before you're a good person, if you don't, you're a bad person. It's contaminating the discussion. It's making the perfect the enemy of the good. In fact, much of the research, and let's face it, much of the research on ESG and sustainability is not what the paper it's written on, but the research that actually takes a closer look has concluded that shades of gray are better than black and white, that investing in brown innovation is better than investing in green innovation, that accepting shades of grays, I think, incremental change is going to be much more effective than this, hey, if you don't do this, we'll all die.
Okay, Professor Damodaran, this is a fascinating statement, and I think we're going to have a really good discussion today, but I have to stop you there so that we can go to questions and answers and explore these ideas in greater detail. So we'll start with Mr. Mazier for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Professor Damodaran, my questions will be for you today. Are Canadian depositors at risk if the government mandates ESG ratings or climate-related disclosure statements on financial institutions?
It goes back to the heart of what I said, which is sacrifice is at the heart of being good. If you're going to ask banks to do something, you got to ask who's paying for it. Bankers are. It's not coming from bankers' personal wealth. The market cap of the 5 biggest Canadian banks collectively will be a drop in the ocean of the cost of meeting climate change. So if you ask banks to bear this cost, and what I hear when I hear that is you got to lend to green energy companies at below market rates. Because if it's at market rates, you don't need any of this stuff. If you're going to ask banks to do it, guess who's going to bear the cost? It's going to be depositors. Is that really what you want of this process? Acting like banks are these great, are like the big tech companies with hundreds of billions of dollars to throw around is delusional. So ultimately, if you put strictures on banks, the people who will pay this, and I can almost guarantee you this outcome, will not be bank shareholders, will not be bank managers, it'll be bank depositors.
Thank you.
I thought your role was to protect them.
Thank you. Sort of goes into my next question. What would be the impact to retirement savings if government forced climate-related disclosures on Canadian pension funds in an attempt to meet the Paris climate targets?
I'll be quite honest. I think I call this disclosure diarrhea. It's happening across the board. Companies, pension funds. You know what the net effect of all of this disclosure is? We get immune to it. We'll have 150 pages. And in fact, if you want truly ineffective legislation, pass more disclosure legislation. It'll actually make people even more immune to debate about climate change because you're going to throw the big stuff and the small stuff into that disclosure. And if in fact, pension funds are required to bear a cost, there again, you got to ask, is this the right group to be bearing that cost?
Will government regulation of ESG scores and climate change disclosure statements on financial institutions have any impact in reducing emissions?
Well, even the ESG services have no idea what ESG measures. ESG is the most diffuse, undefined. It's like nailing Jell-O to a wall. If ESG services have no idea what they're measuring, how the heck are governments going to require companies to follow ESG rules? It's a recipe for disaster again.
So would there'd be basically no way to reduce or to measure the way how many emissions are being even reduced?
Well, they can disclose whatever they want, but if you look at the net effect, it doesn't seem to match up. In fact, if you collect up what companies claim they've done, and then you look at the output and say, why isn't it showing up in the results? There's many a slip in the cup and the lip. Disclosing this doesn't seem to show up in the final numbers. And I think that's a question we've got to ask is why, after 20 years of forcing companies to disclose this, and more so in the last few years, is nothing changing on the ground?
Thank you. You referred to an ESG gravy train in one of your presentations. Can you explain this term and explain how banks and consultants benefit the most from ESG scores and climate-related disclosures?
BlackRock was very much up in fronter in this ESG train early on. In fact, Larry Fink said the world will not be safe if we don't have ESG. So I took BlackRock's Sustainability Fund, which is a fund built around ESG, and I compared it to their regular fund. Out of the 500 stocks in the regular fund, 497 showed up in the Sustainability Fund. The difference was BlackRock charged 5 times more for the Sustainability Fund than the regular fund. You look at fund managers, you look at bankers, you look at consultants, every one of them has an ESG arm, and the ESG arm makes money by selling this notion to people. And again, with the idea that you can be good and be more valuable at the same time.
Thank you. Does improving ESG ratings or climate-related disclosures increase value or decrease risk in any proven way?
None that I can see of. As I said, I've looked at every single research paper in this space. The papers that do are advocacy papers masquerading as research papers. I mean, I live in the value space. That's what I do. I value companies. I'm still to value a company where ESG has made the company more valuable. It can make it less valuable. But when ESG makes a company more valuable, it's because it's PR, it's marketing, at which point you're gaming the system. You're encouraging what you call greenwashing by pushing that idea on companies.
Thank you. You stated in the Financial Times, and I quote, "It serves ESG advocates to keep the definition amorphous since, like the socialists of the 20th centuries, whose response to every socialist failure was that their ideas had never been properly implemented, the defense against every ESG critic is that it is incorrectly defined or implemented," end quote. What did you mean by this?
You have 30 seconds, Professor.
I've had a lot of blowback on that one. The truth is that because ESG measures, you put 100 ESG people in a room, they come up with 100 different definitions. So whatever your critique is, they say, that's not my ESG you're critiquing. Very convenient, but not very, it's not very honest.
Thank you. We'll go now to
Mr. Cram, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you to all the witnesses for joining us today. I'll start with Professor Damodaran. Professor, in your opening statement, you talked about how our dependence on fossil fuels increased more from 1975 to 1995 than at any other time because of the adoption of nuclear energy. And you also spoke about I believe you used the term, the hypocrisy of environmental activists and their bias against nuclear energy. Can you explain why this bias may be there in the first place and what some of the benefits of adopting nuclear energy may be?
You're on mute, Professor.
Our dependence decreased because of nuclear energy. I think part of it is, again, this black and white of, you don't accept shades of gray. You are going to put things on one side of the line or the other. And for whatever reason, perhaps because of safety mostly, nuclear energy ended up on the wrong side of the line. And once you get on the wrong side of the line, there is no way back in this space.
de vous interrompre.
Excusez-moi, oui.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Chair. But in terms of nuclear energy, we're talking about sustainable finance. We already had 4 meetings. We have a report on nuclear energy. I don't know why we're coming back to nuclear energy today. They were talking about finance. Yes, but the subject is quite broad, I think. Broad enough so that we can include discussion on nuclear. We will continue. There are 2 minutes left.
Okay.
As I said, in a world of black and white, once you're on the wrong side of the line, there's no way back. And that, I think, is part of my problem, is purists end up putting one type of energy or the other on one side of the line. And we cut off any chance of...
Critical and harsh things here. And I do not mean any disrespect, but it's now time for Canadians who have to make a decision in just weeks ahead. What do they want for the country? What do they want Canada to be, and where do they want it to be competitively? Trudeau could have never seen Trump coming, and Trump changed everything for him in a way he had no skill set to deal with. So let's talk about your primary mandate of any prime minister. We're in a parliamentary system in Canada. What is paramount is to understand that each of the caucus is running a very defined file and mandate. So your job as Prime Minister when you get in is to find tremendous talent and skills to take a mandate like military procurement. Many Canadians don't realize how huge a budget that is. And the global commitments around manufacturing, processes like the 35 versus the F-18. The person running that, and I don't mean to be critical, is so underqualified to do that. And all the mistakes that come forward discussing an F-18 program versus a more broad-based manufacturing deal and maintenance deal on a different aircraft, the 35, I don't want to get into the minutia. That's a poor manager. Let's go to foreign affairs. Freeland, a disaster, unmitigated disaster. Canada should have a front seat on its own bilateral deal with China. And Trump, and I've said this before, snookered her, played her as a journalist. She was not a diplomat. Why would you leave her in that role? If you are running the caucus, when you see disasters like that roll out, we're not trading anything with China. We're selling them some lobsters. They cut us off because Trump arranged to have us arrest a very important diplomat. I've gone through this with you before. Right. It's only gotten worse. We're not trading anything. We don't even have a seat at the table. I blame Freeland and Trudeau's not understanding the strategy that was being played on him to arrest her. He could have diverted the flight, sent it to Mexico. That is an unmitigated disaster, and she's still there. Harsh words, but Canadians have to deal with the truth now.
Was that one of the worst moves or non-moves he didn't do?
It was the biggest fault of his mandate. He had such a huge opportunity to put Canada at the forefront on energy, on all kinds of materials, on precious metals, on everything with China. And we're selling them lobsters.
Are you surprised? So look, we're elections around the corner now, right? The commission, the SNC Ethics Commission dropped in August. Everyone thought, oh, this is the end for Trudeau. But he's still neck and neck with the Conservative Party right here. Were you surprised it didn't do more harm to him?
No, I mean, that's just what happened to him in Lavalin is just his own lack of experience. I don't think he's a corrupt, immoral person. He's just very inept at managing. He's a bad manager. He's a bad fiduciary. He doesn't have any skill sets. He's never experienced what it's like to manage such a complex thing as the Canadian economy. it's very expensive for me as a Canadian citizen to have such incompetency in so many mandates throughout the cabinet. It's because when he constructed it originally, he didn't use, he wanted diversity, not competency. Competency is your number one criteria. Of course you want diversity, but you can find competency across the board. You've got to put the right men and women in the files. And then it all started to fall apart and unravel. And the way to ask yourself as a Canadian, what actually has he achieved? Nothing. He's achieved nothing. Well, pipelines, disaster. We bought a $4.5 billion pipeline, he shut it down. We've got Saudi ships killing whales in the St. Lawrence, and we don't have our own ships on our own West Coast. That's incompetency. It's a skill set he doesn't have.
Well, there's a separate poll that would show most Canadians feel that he has fulfilled 50% of well, let's say, legalizing pot, whether you agree with it or not.
We have lost capital by the billions. When I look at what we did in finance, we never had the policies to stay competitive with the U.S. Morneau has been an unmitigated disaster. The cabinet is the definition of mediocrity and lack of executional skills. That's what you should be concerned about as a Canadian.
Let me ask you this, okay? I did an informal poll today in my New York City apartment, and I asked about 10 people. I said, could you name me one prime minister besides Trudeau, right? Couldn't name me one. But they all know Trudeau. So I'm saying, whether you like him or not, could you at least agree that on a world stage, from an optics perspective, he's at least put Canada on the map?
Which map would you want to be on? Would that be the map with Saudi Arabia, with China, with Japan, with Malaysia, where our status has all been diminished? Everywhere he goes with free land, they're a disaster. I personally think at the G7, he's considered a lightweight. I'm sorry, these are harsh words. But Canadians have to look at themselves in the mirror and say, can't we do better than this? Anything would be better. And I'll tell you how this happens. The chance that he's going to get a majority mandate, in my opinion, is zero. He may win a minority mandate, and that's good for all of us, because he won't last more than 4 months. The history of taking your party from a majority to a minority is not good. They take you behind, and they get rid of you, and they bring in new leadership. And if I have to be led by the Liberals, I'm agnostic to party. I just want competency. I just want competency. I want someone that's a good manager that can actually execute on any mandate, any mandate.
You know what we need to do? We need to have special election coverage that night, you and I, Kevin, commenting on the election. Okay, last great prime minister Canada had, who is it for you?
Well, I think there are many on both sides of...
All right, gang, I think we're going to cross over now. I think we've got our man, Scott Campbell.
Hey.
There we go. Smooth and easy, Scott. How are you?
Hey, I'm okay. With this format, all the voices speak at once because they're pre-recorded. So I just hear all the voices.
You've got voices going on in your head. Guys, Scott has lost his mind.
Oh, yeah.
Just teasing. Are you hearing voices? Are you hearing sounds now? It should be just you and I.
See, I hear my voice now.
Should be just you and I. What's up? Scott, I appreciate you've been watching pretty much the entire time since I've started. And things have changed, but you've managed to stick with it.
Twice, and I don't know when I can speak and it's appropriate.
Oh, speak now. Go ahead. Why are we so delayed? It should be this should be a straight up conversation.
I hear you say everything twice.
Are you watching the live feed? Because get rid of that, just this.
Oh, do I have to go over here? Oh, whoops.
Just close the window where you're watching us and will just converse. That's the
Close this
delay.
and just go to
Like whatever
says any
you have,
changes.
whatever apparatus you have, like engaged in. Okay. Sorry, gang. Back to it.
Of the political spectrum. You see, what I think you don't understand about me, and I'll just, because we were getting to know each other a little bit, is I'm agnostic to party. I couldn't give less. I beg for competency. And you have to ask yourself in Canada, why do we keep getting Rachel Notley's, Justin Trudeau's, Kathleen Wynne's, McGuinty's, who are fine people, but have no fiduciary skills, no management skills, no track records in delivering anything, and leave us in massive deficits, completely uncompetitive? We have to do some soul searching as Canadians. We have to start figuring out, how do we bring competent people into the political process and make it easier for them to run? I'm not saying politicians shouldn't be running all the time as leaders, but they don't have any, in many cases, executional skills.
So let me rephrase that question.
Sure.
Last great Liberal leader Canada had.
I'm trying to think last great leader, but no matter whether I pick Liberal or Conservative, you're going to say, well, you're biased. In terms of executing mandates in recent times, I would have to say Harper delivered on about 75% of his multiple campaign promises. And sure, he's a conservative, but I don't care. What I care about is the ability that he delivered. And whether you liked him or not, delivering on that's in modern times. That was a long run he had it. Nobody knew who he was. And so if you're a Canadian, what you care about is, am I competitive? Am I attracting jobs? Can I compete globally? And can I form, now it has to be bilateral mandates with other countries, because the G7 is a washout. That was a joke what just happened. There's nothing happening there. It's an opportunity for some photos, but it's irrelevant. Trump has changed all that. He said, I'm going to make deals with China. I'm going to do my own deal with Britain. I'm going to do my own deal with France. And here's Canada sitting, and they're not even a player. I mean, doesn't that frustrate? René Lévesque, my goodness, he delivered. I mean, provincially.
Yeah, I mean,
you may not like him, but look at
right.
how he took a mandate and had executional skills. I'm thinking about the ability to deliver as an individual leader and technical skills.
I mean, like him or not, he's a legend in Quebec.
But that's my point.
Yeah.
We need to find men and women like that, regardless of party. I would take a strong manager, anybody that has management skills, that can pick men and women into the mandates around the country. We desperately need change. Now, if that ends up being, for me, a minority Liberal government, and then we find Justin something he can do, but get him out of there, that's good. That's a good outcome.
Kevin O'Leary, I always love chatting with you. Promise me you'll come back before the election.
I love it, and I can't wait, because I'm so optimistic. I'm going long the Canadian dollar, and I've been right so far, and then I'm buying the Canadian index because I think change is afoot. We're not staying in this horrible situation of mediocrity and competency. It's going to change.
I love the passion. I love the energy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. We will be back on Kiko.com tomorrow.
Time now to take the nation's political pulse, and we have the man to help us do just that. Dr. Nick Nanos is the founder and chief data scientist at Nanos Research. You're not a real doctor. I'm joking. Nick, how are you, sir?
No, not a real doctor. I am a real professor, though. A little trivia point. But anyway,
do you have a doctorate?
No, I'm one of those guys that started a doctorate but didn't quite finish it. So I guess I'm a bit of a wash-up on that front. But things seem to have turned out okay.
That's what I think of you, Nick. You're a wash-up. That's how I look at you. All right. The Liberals not washed up just yet. They're actually seeing a bit of a bounce.
Well, yeah, a little bit of life, at least in the Liberal numbers. When we look at those national tracking numbers, the Conservatives still have the support of almost 4 in 10 Canadians at around 39%. They're down a little bit. The margin of error for the survey is plus or minus 3.1 percentage points, 19 times out of 20. You can see the Liberals at 26, up 4, NDP at 20, down 2, Bloc at 8. The Green Party has about 5%, People's Party at 2. But a little, and the thing is, Roger, when the numbers move between the Conservatives and the Liberals, it has a material impact on the advantage that the Conservatives have, because it like goes from one column to the other. That said, Conservatives still with a very comfortable 13-point advantage and are in majority territory, but maybe a little bit of a hope for the Liberals, but for the Conservatives, still a pretty good advantage.
Sorry, Kenzie, I'm gonna barge right in. How are you doing? I just saw you there. How are you doing?
Doing great, thanks. Just thought you might want to chat about some stuff.
Did you have a great Remembrance Day? Like, did you have the day off?
I had a really weird thing today. I fell asleep and absolutely slept through and woke up at 10 after 11. I was so upset. I never sleep that late. It was so weird. So disappointing.
What's going on this evening? Just watching some of the daily soap opera, like the Canadian political drama?
Not just Canadian, but I mean, right now we're embroiled in global politics, but especially obviously U.S. politics, right? It is huge right
big
now.
election down there last week, but times are going to change, and I'm sure there's going to be resistance.
I totally think that Kevin O'Leary should be the conservative version of Mark Carney.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Mark Carney has, for a very long time, obviously worked with the WEF, Bilderberg, and all these different things. He was obviously the Bank of Canada governor, and as well as the Bank of England. And he has nothing to do with our best interests. He's a terrible man.
No, not at all. Like, he's selling heat pumps to people.
I know. I've known that for a long time. Like, he is a terrible man. And
they're
meanwhile,
crazy expensive
Kevin
to
O'Leary,
operate.
who is also a total capitalist, let's say, rather than a globalist, and he is at least for Canada. Like, it is his. Like, he is a nationalist, he's a Canadian. Sure, he went off and made his money, and he's kind of like Trump in the sense that he went out and did his own thing and made money and, you know, but still kept to certain values. So to have him as the backer, the investment financial backer of CPC seems to make sense to me. You see where I'm going with that?
I'm very,
I don't
very
think he should be a politician. I think he'd be wasted as a politician.
I think he is a politician and he is a waste. I've got zero interest in anything that Mark Carney has to say at all.
No, I'm talking about Kevin O'Leary.
Oh, no. Sorry, I like Kevin O'Leary, but he's too smart, too rich for politics. Like,
that's my point. He should be that background guy, that background financial economic advisor, like
yeah, in an
Mark
advisory
Carney on the
capacity,
liberal
I think
side.
that'd be best.
no, I'd agree with that. Scott, are you tuned in? We're in sync?
I think I am. Do you hear me now?
Hi, Scott.
Yes. Hey, Scott.
I'm on the
Kenzie,
moon.
Scott.
It's taking time for the voices to travel.
It should be about instant. Like, if you're watching on the channel
1,
still,
2, 3,
that's
4,
going to be delayed.
5, 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
Stop
Oh, well.
watching the live stream. Only focus on this interface.
I went over to, I left the YouTube one on mute, and I'm now on the studio screen.
Yeah, no, it
But
seems
there's a
like
time
it's working here.
But I can't tell I can hear my voice playing over after I speak, and then you respond to that one. Oh well,
yeah,
we're behind the
I'm not
times
sure.
in BC. So I'll give you one last look at my beautiful face, and then I'll go.
You're gorgeous, Scott. You're a pretty,
Yeah.
pretty man.
Yeah. Just 5'2" and eyes of blue. Is there a dog?
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. We're gonna drop back into some videos, guys. Thank you very much for hanging out. We're gonna drop back to the show. We're heading out, guys.
Any indicators as to why that's what? 'Cause it's a fairly big kind of month to month or week to week jump, isn't it?
Yeah, it's of note, and I think a lot of this has to do with election fever. Maybe that's what we should be calling our segment soon enough, because man, we don't know when there'll be an election. There are multiple non-confidence votes that have been introduced, and I think as Canadians start to be more focused on the election, they're looking at all of the party choices that are before them, and who knows where we'll be in another 4 weeks.
I know, and there's a lot going on also provincially. There's elections everywhere there, so everybody's thinking elections at different levels. So it's an interesting time right now. We will be busy for the next little while. Let's talk about how people feel about the federal government. You looked at the numbers between December 2020 and October 24, and how do they match up?
Well, you check out the numbers in terms of the proportion of Canadians that have a negative view, right? Kind of like pessimism and anger right now. You can see, wow, Roger, more than almost 6 out of every 10, I think it's about 58% have negative views, feeling angry, feeling pessimistic. And only a minority of Canadians are either optimistic or satisfied when they think of the federal government. We have to remember it's not the Liberal government, it's just the federal government, but still, it speaks to the mood. We talk about populism and anger. We see what's happening in the United States. A lot of those similar sentiments are definitely in Canada.
That is crazy. That's a sea change.
Yeah. And I think this, basically explains, back in 2020, we have to remember that was during the pandemic, right? And at that time, you know what? The federal government was pushing money out to help Canadians, the CERB payments and stuff like that. There was a response to the pandemic, whether you like.
Like, why aren't we doing that right now? Do you think?
Doing what? Like doing?
Well, this meeting, we've heard all the great possibilities of capstone and mission-driven research, et cetera. And why, with all the wise people at all the granting agencies and at universities, why aren't we doing it already?
So I think maybe it's just about the history of the creation of the tri-councils and the division of the science that then falls under the mandates of those tri-councils, because then that's how we've kind of created these silos of social sciences and humanities, natural sciences, and then the health research, CIHR. The siloing of those into those funding structures has benefited the community in the way that we can consolidate different funding through those processes, but it has created gaps where you can't provide as well interdisciplinary research that might combine multiple domains. And so that's where I see the strengths of the capstone coming, is that you can have the interdisciplinarity right ingrained into the mandate, including the mission-driven. It's not to say that we don't do applied research in a lot of these tri-agencies, but I think that distinction is important because applied research definitely does happen into the tri-agencies, but the mission-driven is where you kind of have this intention from up down, where you have a vision for what the mission should be for Canada.
Who do you think should be the one that decides what the missions are?
I think
is that the
it's a really
government of
important
the day that's handing out the money? Is that the wise people at all the universities? Who do you think gets to decide the missions?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that's a really important question, because it's important that research and broadly is occurring outside of any sort of political interference, and that is how it will be sustainable. If we have something like the Science and Innovation Council that is representative of the community, I think that is where I see a large portion of vision and guidance coming from, because you have that community representation. I think that you will always have the operating kind of board of directors and leadership that will be more on the bureaucratic side. And I think that that will, the combination of the two will allow for things like that to be happening. If I can, I'll say one last thing, because I think things like having publicly available strategic plans and mandates also will help that to be really accountable to the public and to policymakers to be able to hold that accountable.
Allison, what are your thoughts on who gets to decide?
I share the sentiments of my colleague in that what's really essential as we look to prioritize and develop strategy and plans is that diversity of voices. And, you know, you mentioned the universities several times, but we also have research taking place in clinical settings, at the patient's bedsides, in colleges, as we heard earlier, and a variety of other settings. So I think the need to make decisions about how Canada is going to respond to these increasingly massive global challenges like climate change, AI, things like that, are increasingly multidisciplinary, which is perhaps to your point of why the three existing mechanisms might need an overarching umbrella framework for mission-driven, major international, and multidisciplinary in ways that we haven't seen so far.
Right. And in all the presentations I've heard today and what I've read, very impressive. But the question maybe is, have there been enough details? Are we lacking details? Do we have any guidance on how many years, how much money? Because there's some impressive claims with this mission-driven research with Capstone. So are there details that you've had or that you think there should be? What does it look like? Allison, you can go first, and then Sarah. We'll switch it up this time, sure.
Thank you for the question. I think what we're working on is the level of detail that was provided in Budget 2024, and then the timeline that more will be coming out in the fall economic statement. And then, of course, what we did was respond to the opportunity to provide input from our community earlier this summer, which, of course, was our chance to outline the principles, the risks, the ideas that we would hope would be incorporated or considered as those additional details are developed. And of course, one of our main recommendations is that all the communities continue to be consulted, because clearly this is not, as I think one of the colleagues earlier said, a one and done. To get this right and to evolve it over time, you know, we all have to continue to work together and consult, you know, throughout.
I'll only echo, I'll echo mainly what Allison has said here. You know, I think we are waiting for the fall economic statement for the details that you are looking for, and I think the community is looking for as well. While generally I think the community is really positive about this, there is questions, and so I think that's why it's important to have conversations like this now to say, you know, here are some of the values that we're hoping to see, and also then we can have conversations later about accountability and how to enforce things once we do get some announcements.
Thank you. That's the time. Thank you. We'll now turn to MP Jazik for 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and to all the witnesses for this panel. The need for a capstone organization seems to have been clearly established, starting with the Naylor Report 2017, Bouchard Report. The intention of coordination, mission-driven, I think we all understand that concept. I'm more interested in how the structure is actually going to work. Is it necessary to maintain boards of directors and CEOs for the tri-councils? Why would you not, from a structural point of view, and to possibly promote efficiency and maybe even save some money, have the capstone organization and just simply not disband the tri-councils, have all that assessment of individual research projects occur via the tri-councils, but somehow have a way of coordinating that activity without having to have approvals through individual boards and CEOs that then go to the overarching capstone. So I'm just trying to understand if some of this, through the consultation that you were engaged in through the summer, if some of these more detailed kinds of how it will work. Ms. Evans, you use the term without delay. There seems to be a certain urgency when you talk about mission-driven, etc. How are we going to ensure that, in fact, there is no delay, that the coordination occurs rapidly? Could you elaborate just in a very practical way as to how you see this working? So perhaps, Ms. Evans, I'll start with you.
Thanks for the question. And again, we share curiosity about some of the operational details, and we value the opportunity we had to outline things we think should be being considered to operationalize well. We think that all the intentions that have been shared and the aspirations are great, but a lot of it is the devil's in the details, and implementation is very important. We agree that there is huge operational streamlining and efficiencies to be gained by having all three granting agencies sort of under one umbrella. And we think that there's, to your point about how this could help with speed, when the pandemic hit, we didn't have a go-to spot to set up our rapid response research and this and that was necessarily as transdisciplinary and robust as we need going forwards for such things. And now I think it was Chad Gaffield who earlier talked about that one door that will allow the government, when a major crisis or opportunity or challenge reaches a boiling point, we have a mechanism through which the power of each three autonomous, investigator-led, disciplinary-rich organizations can more systematically work together on transdisciplinary challenges.
Baz?
Thank you. I think that it's important that the existing roles and responsibilities of the tri-agencies are relatively unimpeded during this process, just because of the importance of research and the everyday research that does happen. But I think that this is an opportunity to review and harmonize a lot of that interagency communication. And even in the fundamental science review, they recommended that the government should undertake a comprehensive review to modernize it where possible and to harmonize a lot of those legislations between the four agencies and support extramural research as well. So, these have been calls that have been coming since 2017, and opening up the idea of capstone does allow us to reevaluate some of those things, and even including the review of current allocations of funding between the tri-councils as well. So I think that it ensures that we can have these types of conversations in a time where we are starting to have the conversation surrounding preventing duplications of things and really trying to streamline and enhance productivity and efficiency.
And perhaps, Dr. Hariri, are you aware of other countries' organization of this sort, just from your institute's knowledge of potentially the structure in other countries? Could you give us some examples of where this kind of organization is working well?
Sure, certainly. One of the countries that we can look into is the UK and United Kingdom. A couple of years ago, they merged a couple of granting agencies into UK Research and Innovation, what it's known as UKRI, under one CEO with one mission, but different units in it. And that perhaps could provide some lessons learned, which we can look into. And I hope the government and the granting agencies, they are looking into these models to take lessons from them. So UKRI perhaps could be one of the best examples to look.
Thank you so much. In the consultations, would you say that there was good engagement? Were you given lots of opportunity to provide feedback through the summer? We know that was the intention. And did you feel you were well consulted?
I can go first. It was a bit of a shorter turnaround of a consultation. I think that most people were able to engage with their communities pretty rapidly, mostly because I think the research community is really interested in this. And so I think a lot of our organizations are getting constant questions about this, and people want to engage. I believe that they got about 118 submissions in, I believe, about 30 days, which is pretty substantial, and I think represents the interest from the community on this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll now turn to MP Blanchard-Joncar for your 6 minutes, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je salue les témoins qui sont avec nous pour cette...
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the witnesses for a second panel. My question is to Madame Lafrançoise. I think we're turning around in circles. Today we're evaluating a framework for research funding. Principles.
Happens, the more open that is, the more that the not-for-profit and public side will be able to contribute.
Avez-vous l'impression que le gouvernement...
Run out of time?
We'll turn to Ms. McPherson for 6 minutes, please.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
I think our leader, Trudeau, I don't think I've ever heard him say a true word.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here? Oh, yeah.
It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Wiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises. WTF. Here.
I know this place is where I am. No other place is better than. No matter where I go, I am proud to be Canadian. I am, you know I am. The one we call Canadian.
Gentlemen, beam me aboard.